Welcome back, everyone, to Unclassified number 10. Can you believe we've been doing this for 10 weeks now? 10 episodes? Actually, it's 9 weeks because we did. Remember when Syria fell?
It was a
When
double,
friend of the
yeah.
pod had to flee to Moscow? And now, but we're on week 9, episode 10. And we have a lot of news ahead of us. Of course, there's a ceasefire. There's stuff going on in Ukraine. Here in the United States, always stuff happening. But remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to follow there. It helps the pod out. It helps us grow. And the more we grow, the better these shows get. So help us along there. But, Preston, the biggest news in the world, there's a ceasefire in Gaza. Tell us all about it. What happened?
So this is actually relatively breaking. We're recording this the morning of January 17th. Just about an hour or two ago, the Israeli War Cabinet voted to approve the ceasefire. So it's moving forward at this point. We'll see, man. I'll say tenuous at best. It's really interesting in a lot of ways. This is not an end to the war, and I think it's being presented as such. So this is very similar to past ceasefires that have been floated, where there's a multi-phase plan, and the general gist of it is that phase one would go into effect Sunday, so this weekend. It would provide for 33 Israelis being held by Hamas in Gaza, hostages, to be released in exchange for a number of Palestinian prisoners, people that have been arrested by Israel. And it's like, if you want to, we can stop right there for a second, because like even that gets really complicated. It's not clear that those 33 are alive, or how many of them are still alive. There hasn't been a proof of life, so some of them, unfortunately, it might be the return of their remains. Some of them are children. I think one of them was 9 months when they were taken by Hamas. So you have,
geez.
yeah,
That's like a whole child now.
yeah, which is crazy, man.
Yeah.
On the other side, you'll hear a lot of contentious points about this, where people will refer to the Palestinians being released as prisoners or hostages. They are people who have been arrested by Israel, and it's for a wide variety of crimes. Some of them are serving life sentences for murdering Israelis, like they have like blood on their hands from committing violent acts. Others were honestly wrong place, wrong time, kind of rounded up in a sense, and their release, fine. Like there's no indication that they would automatically go pick up an AK and start fighting alongside Hamas. So it's just a lot, and you'll see critics look at this and say they're releasing all of these murderers, and like, yes, some murderers are going to be getting out for this, but not all. There are some people that maybe shouldn't still be detained in Israel. But either way, that's phase one. Also, Israel would remove troops from all previously populated areas in the Gaza Strip. They would stay in the Gaza Strip, however, which moves us to phase two. Phase 2 and 3 would be negotiated during phase 1. So phase 1, okay. 33 out of about 100 hostages are returned. So there's still a fair amount in Gaza, and Israeli forces remain in Gaza. Phase 2 would be Israeli forces exiting the Gaza Strip in exchange for the remaining hostages. And then there'd be a prisoner to hostage exchange going on there. And phase 3 would be the reconstruction of Gaza. You'll notice throughout that, there's nothing about Hamas ceding power in the Gaza Strip. As the terms are written right now, Hamas would remain in control, which makes it hard to believe that this is going to have any longevity.
Why the phases?
That's really just been what it's been from the start. You can go back to at least May, maybe before, when this essential same framework was thrown out there. I would probably say that it's such a complicated issue that they're just trying to get little pieces done at a time. And I missed something earlier. Humanitarian aid will flow into Gaza, an increase in humanitarian aid in phase 1. So that's what the Palestinians are getting. They're getting some people back, and they're getting humanitarian aid. And the Israeli troops are leaving certain areas. So I think it's just that it's so complicated, but maybe I'm being pessimistic. I don't see any chance that this thing actually results in a long-term peace. There's already people inside of Israel pushing back on this, saying this is just delaying the inevitable.
When you say that, so you said some of the hostages that it might be their remains. I have like a more general question about this. Does Hamas, and you see this also with like other countries, like sometimes it happens with North Korea with U.S. soldier remains, right? Or Vietnam. Why do these countries safeguard their remains? Do they like take conscious effort to protect the remains? How does that work? Because to me, when I see these videos of like the fighting in Russia and Ukraine, sometimes bodies just seem to lay there for weeks.
Yeah, it would all be very different. So the North Korea issue, for one, is there are still, to a degree, I think it fell off recently, but there's recovery efforts for American soldiers that were killed there during the Korean War. It's not that North Korea is necessarily looking for them. There used to be some cooperation there, which I believe has kind of fallen through. But that's very different. They're uncovering remains in like uninhabited mountains occasionally, that kind of thing. In Gaza, it's very different. So these are hostages that are being held and protected by Hamas. Protected in the sense of not letting them leave. Guarded is probably a better term. It's a bargaining chip, even if they're dead, unfortunately. So they're certainly maintaining control of the remains, but to the degree they're being respectful, maybe hard to say. I wouldn't expect much there. Just keeping them in their control for now, I'd say.
Gotcha. And so with the ceasefire, you say it's delaying the inevitable. People in Israel feel it's delaying the inevitable. What is the inevitable?
Yeah, and I want to be careful that the interesting thing here is you're getting a lot of celebration and frustration from different angles of every side in this conflict. So I don't mean to suggest that like everybody in Israel is upset about this. In fact, a poll just yesterday from their Channel 13 showed that 62% on 60-something% supported this agreement. So there's a lot of people in Israel that do want to see an end to the war. They do want to see the hostages returned home. The reason I say it's delaying the inevitable is, what's changed, big picture. Hamas remains in power at the end of this deal, should this all work out. Hamas will remain in power. There's some real arguments to be made right now that, for as many Hamas militants as Israel killed, they probably radicalized enough others or pushed them over the brink to want to get revenge now for their families that were killed, which is an understandable feeling. And Israel is going to withdraw from the Gaza Strip. So it feels in a lot of ways kind of similar to the situation on October 6th. Just, Hamas's infrastructure has been heavily damaged, a lot of their capabilities destroyed, a lot of their leadership killed. But, two of the major aspects that Israel is pushing for from day one in this was Hamas can no longer be in power and they can no longer pose a threat to Israel like they did on October 7th. It doesn't feel like that's going to be gone. That's not resolved. That like the core issues here aren't resolved, if that makes sense.
Right. So here in the United States, this happened, and everyone started talking about us instead. And you have people fighting online. Was it Biden? Was it Trump? The State Department says it was both of them. Trump says it was me. Biden says, look here, Jack. It was me. So what do you to make of this? Who's right? Who's lying? Is Matt Miller to State Department telling the truth? Who gave us the ceasefire deal?
That's been really interesting because you've got both sides in the U.S., parts of both sides, again, I should say, jumping on this saying this was 100% Trump or this is 100%. Look, Trump got done in a few days or a few weeks what Biden couldn't get done in a few years. And then conversely, look, Biden got this thing wrapped up before Trump comes into office so Biden can claim responsibility. There's a million different angles you can look at this one. And we don't know for sure. I would just be cautious for either party to take full responsibility here because, one, it looks like a very tenuous ceasefire. It is not an end to the war. It's temporary. And we've got, so the groups that are celebrating this right now, Hamas declared victory. The Iranian Islamic
yeah.
Revolutionary Guard Corps declared victory. So if Iran and Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah sent their regards to the victorious Palestinians, like, I don't know that that's the agreement, which is a thing to a degree. Like, they claim victory no matter what in a lot of these conflicts, but I don't know how much any U.S. politician wants to really be the one behind an agreement that may, in the relatively short term, be viewed as something that fell apart and was a net benefit to Hamas in some way, shape, or form.
What do you think? So, Hamas, they claim victory. So does the IRGC. Two groups who are not doing well. Probably at their worst right now. What do you make of this? Do you just think, whatever, it's more bluster? Do you think maybe people need to start getting a little bit more wise in how they engage? Like, why is it that a terror group wins if they just outlast? Because that's not really, the case. Is that a win? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's an error and the United States has been guilty of this for quite a while now in a lot of conflicts. You could argue all the way back anything since World War II. Did I disconnect?
I stopped hearing you, but I figured maybe you're still talking, so you're still recording in your end, though.
Let me close out some windows just to be safe. So I'd argue that the issue here is that there's room for a party in a conflict to say we won without clear evidence on the ground. And it's something that I think the United States has been guilty of over the past few decades. I mean, probably go back to any conflict post-World War II, where we leave enough room for the other side to, in some way, shape, or form, say we came out of this on top. It's not a decisive victory. Like, there is no way for Imperial Japan to say that they won World War II. It was not. It wasn't possible. And the same with Nazi Germany. There was no way in 1946 they could say, well, actually, we won. Like, it didn't pass the common sense test. And in just about every conflict since then, we've left enough wiggle room in there for groups to be able to navigate in and say, well, actually, we did win because A, B, C, and D. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in Gaza. There's enough wiggle room. And that's partially because the Israeli military is agreeing to leave. Hamas is staying in control. It doesn't appear like their groups overseas, like in Qatar, are coming under any increased scrutiny. So, yeah, Iran and the axis of resistance is degraded, but it's not that decisive defeat where there's no way to claim otherwise.
Right. Interesting. And so, on your U.S. point there, I mean, outside of Afghanistan, is there really any other place? Or that could
Yeah,
be
I mean, I
true?
think we could. Yeah, for sure. I think we could say the same in Iraq because we just kind of decided at one point that it was time to go, and
Well,
Iraq
hold
is.
on. Is it not widely accepted that we won? Like Saddam, we overthrew his ass, and then he got hung by his own people. Or is the conventional? Do people believe we lost?
Well, it's not that we lost against Saddam. It's that the overall
Yeah.
war may not have been a net success. I think there's a fair argument to be had there because it didn't take long as soon as the U.S. withdrew for two major things to happen. Islamic State came rampaging across western and northern Iraq, and the Iraqi military fled immediately, like we're completely overwhelmed. And then the Iranian influence on Iraq was almost immediate. I mean, it is borderline, to a degree, Iraq is borderline like an Iranian proxy. The government is so heavily influenced by Iran. So we lost any amount of real control. And you've seen recently, there's been back and forth a little bit, but you've seen the Iraqis start to push for us to leave the country entirely. So that's what I'm talking about, where there's some wiggle room. Like, we allowed that wiggle room to be there, and Islamic State and Iran came in and took over that vacuum.
Gotcha. And so, what do you see happening here? 6 months from now, is there peace in the Middle East, or are we back to them fighting again? But also, you're right. It's interesting to me that the question of Gaza, I mean, it was never going to be addressed, but I thought perhaps at some point we would. I don't see how Israel can continue this Gaza thing, but it's not just Israel. It's also Gazans in the West Bank and Egypt. I don't see how this is sustainable. You have people kind of locked. I mean, they got walls across the whole thing. They're kind of locked in the city. What, like, it just doesn't seem like it's gonna work to me, unless unless the global community pours in money to make them like Venice or something. I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah. There's kind of competing thoughts here, which is Trump is bringing in kind of the most pro-Israeli cabinet we've seen in a long, long time. In Rubio's hearing, and I know we're going to get into some of that here in the second half of the episode, he went out of his way to say, like, yeah, Hamas is bad. There should be no Hamas supporters here in the United States. I know I'm paraphrasing, probably missing major parts, and talking about how Hamas needs to be eradicated entirely from the Gaza Strip. So, like, this is a very pro-Israel administration. At the same time, I don't think Trump really cares about the Middle East. I think he views it a little bit as an annoyance. So, how does that play out? I think on the one hand, what you could see is Israel pointing to violations that Hamas breaches the agreement or doesn't live up to their end of the agreement sometime after the inauguration, and they go right back in, or continue operations, I should say, because they'll still be in the Gaza Strip. And maybe this time they go about it without really any pushback from the U.S. government. I don't know if that ends up bringing about any sort of end to the conflict, but it's kind of at odds, honestly, because I don't think the new administration prioritizes what's happening in the Middle East in general. For better or for worse, right? You can say that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just don't think it's one of his top issues.
Do you think the U.S. will lose influence in the Middle East? I mean, we lifted the terror bounty on Jolani.
Our boy
right?
Jolani.
So you have to imagine we have some kind of influence there. Do you think we'll lose it under Trump? Or do you think Trump and Jolani will get along? Or do you think these two men never meet or talk about each other ever?
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the
Trump meeting?
Yeah, because I am seeing a handful of accounts on, because this happened under the Biden administration, you see some folks on the right really pushing, I think, more against Jolani than they would otherwise. That'll be interesting. That's a unique dynamic. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to lose any influence. I wouldn't say that. I think that's I think that's too broad a brushstroke right now.
Do you think so? The last time he was president, Mr. Trump or President Trump, he allowed Turkey to go after the Kurds. Shouldn't say he allowed them. He just stopped backing the Kurds, I believe. Is that the correct way to frame it? Do you think that he will back Turkey if they attempt any incursion in the Syria? Or maybe they already are. I just haven't followed it. Or do you think he will say, stop?
Again, I think it goes back to the priorities. I don't... Are you laughing at your own joke right now?
Well, I was trying to think. I was like, I don't know. He just tweeted stop last term. And he's just like, see,
was that
it
it?
worked.
That
and
was
I was like, okay.
No, I just don't think it's a top priority is what it comes down to. I don't think that I think he'll put some people in charge over there. They're going to be the envoys to the Middle East. I know he's already got one, Woodruff, the guy who's in the ceasefire negotiations this time. I think he's going to offload a lot of that responsibility and focus elsewhere, whether that's domestic, whether that's Asia Pacific, whether that's Europe. I think it's just not going to be a focus at all.
I could see that. And so do you think Lebanon, is it taking the back burner of this administration?
Lebanon?
Yes.
I mean, I think Lebanon's been on the back burner for a while. I don't know that that's been... I think that it was a flash in the pan a little bit. I mean, they got some attention during the course of the last, 18, 24 months, but realistically, before October 7th, the United States, outside of, people in the government, there wasn't really much focus at all on Lebanon, even with the Hezbollah threat. So I think there's going to be a lot,
That's true. So, the Islamic State, I saw that they put out to their followers that arson is a good plan. Could you tell me a little bit more about this? Yeah,
so we got the California wildfires, of course, and just yesterday, the day before, they posted on one of their publications, hey guys, listen, arson is the thing. That's in 2025. They saw the damage that it did in LA, and they were like, it's easy, it's cheap. You don't have to blow yourself up in a car bomb. You don't set off alarms when you're trying to buy certain materials that could be used for explosive devices. and they just suggested to their followers like, hey, this might actually be a good thing to try, and they've got nothing to lose, right? I mean, imagine if a portion of this LA wildfire was started by a terrorist, regardless of their belief system or the group they're part of. That'd be crazy, right?
That is true. That would be nuts.
So, yeah, it's not stupid on their behalf, but it's a little bit exhausting the way I'm looking at it. Like, God dang it! Like, we just had cars. We haven't figured that one out yet. They're still driving cars into groups of people, unfortunately, and that one's incredibly hard to defeat. And now they're looking at fire. Like, I don't know. They're resilient. They're smart, and wouldn't be shocked if you see some sort of arson attacks now in the coming year or two.
I think. Well, haven't they figured out the cars though? Because I feel like at least here in Chicago, like on like pedestrian only streets or like around Wrigley Field, Soldier Field, they have these big like flower pots that are just solid concrete. They're like they're supposed to be like not look like a terror defense device, but they
DC
are.
is loaded with those, right? Like all of Washington DC is
DC, and sometimes you don't even notice. I know Target has them with their big. That's what the big red balls are for. You know, to stop people from driving into it. Not that they're a terror target, but that is what they say the big red balls are for. So I was like, okay. But yeah, they're all over, and sometimes they disguise them into big red balls or the flower pots or whatever. But I think to a certain extent we did. And the reason New Orleans happened was because they were undergoing construction, so they were offline. Which in hindsight, pretty bad, but you can't really predict that. I think that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, but I think the challenge is like there's a lot more. You could do this type of terror attack when in a group of 20 people, and like there's plenty of groups of 20 people, even in my community here, that are not protected by that kind of stuff. So it's a very maybe it's not going to happen like in front of the Capitol building in DC or outside a sporting venue in Chicago, but like a random street in Cleveland, like all day.
Absolutely. That is true.
I don't know what you do
but
about
then you
that.
would also have to wonder what Cleveland did to anger ISIS.
That's another side.
Nobody goes to Cleveland. No one goes to Cleveland.
Hey, let's jump up to
yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say let's jump up to Ukraine for a second.
Yeah, what is happening in the OG war of the 2020s?
You following the North Korea stuff at all?
Which one? That they banned hot dogs?
Well done. No, they captured 2 North Korean soldiers this past week. And
wow.
Yeah, and this has been an interesting one because it was probably like 2 or 3 months ago, news first came out that North Korean soldiers may be utilized by the Russian military in Ukraine. And it was a mixed bag because you had some rather reputable sources saying that this thing is happening. But at the same time, it's been a key component of Zelensky's speeches since then, saying like, hey guys, this is a world war, whether you like it or not. You know, Exhibit A, North Korean troops are now in country. So you have to, when you hear that, you have to keep in mind that there's an incentive for him to want to portray this as a world war. And then any intelligence agency in the middle of a conflict, like actively fighting a war, you have to be a little skeptical of. But then South Korea came out and talked about it. Then the United States came out and talked about it, and the UK, and it just kept going. Then we started to see clips of what looked like North Korean soldiers. Anyways, fast forward to, and plenty of fakes, by the way, also. But we just had 2 guys that were captured, and they were interrogating them, and they didn't speak Ukrainian. They didn't speak Russian. They only spoke the North Korean dialect of Korean. And they had to work with South Korean intelligence agencies to work through the interrogation. And they have them on video talking. And they're pretty drugged up because they're both wounded. But it was it was kind of a conundrum for Ukraine, if you think about it, because you're not supposed to show POWs in a way that could be used against them or to show them in a compromised state. And these guys are drugged up, wounded in a hospital bed, being held by enemy forces, right? Like, that's about as compromised as you can get. But at the same time, what do you do? Because you're trying to prove to the world that these guys are there and they're fighting. But it does look, I feel like that at least closes the book for now. Like, yes, they are there, 100%. Can we finally agree that that's a thing?
Why do you think that there's such disbelief? Because you've seen the United States, I believe, refrain from saying that they're fighting there still. And Ukraine and South Korea are the only ones saying they're in active combat, unless Europe has come around. But why do you think that the West is so, you know, meek about it?
I wonder if it's an escalation thing, like a concern that if that's already happening, because we've kind of pushed back against other countries saying don't get involved, don't get involved, don't ship weapons, whatever it might be, to support Russia. I wonder if it's a so what do we do? They did it, North Korea. Like, what action do we take against them now? But it again, like I could be fooled. Of course, had happened plenty of times, but it really looks like these are North Korean soldiers.
I mean, might be. I guess the whole thing is like, are they that afraid of escalation? I mean, what's the alternative? I mean,
I don't know.
is any
What's your
NATO
thought?
country-
What's your thought?
Okay.
Why would they sit on it and not push this further?
I think you're right about escalation to a certain extent. But I don't think that it's as volatile of a situation as they make it out to be. I think that, I mean, who's willing to go in? I know, like, Estonia and Latvia talked about we're going to deploy troops, and then we're just not going to. They're going to be in, like, the western part, and they'll free up troops, right, for Ukraine. And I've seen Poland kind of talk about the same thing, or, like, doing a no-fly zone in the western half of the country. I just don't think there's any NATO member who's, like, down to go fight right now. So to me, it's like, I don't really think it's that much of an escalation. If anything, I think it just allows the United States to say, all right, well, you know, Ukraine's fighting two countries now, so we're going to send more arms.
Yeah, I guess part of it there is if you look at some of those, Eastern NATO countries that are the most hawkish in this conflict, this could serve as top cover for them, right? To say, what's the situation with North Korea? We have North Korean troops, a Russian ally, serving inside of Russia because they're in Kursk right now. They're protecting Russian territory. What's the problem with that? And the same argument could then be made for, let's say, Estonian or Polish troops to go down to the southern front in Kherson and say, hey, what's the big deal? They're protecting they're protecting Ukrainian territory. Or even in a counteroffensive in Chasiv Yar and say, what's the big deal? This is Ukrainian territory. They're not going on Russian territory.
True.
And maybe we'd have a harder time pushing back on that. I don't know.
I think, as it stands now, I don't think we're at risk of a larger war. I think these peace negotiations they're talking about, where they want to have European peacekeepers in the DMZ, I think does present a larger war. Because I think the issue with democracies with war is that, like, all right, so, the Russians killed 10 Chinese soldiers. It's bad, sad, but China can just kind of wave it away, right? And there are no consequences there. But if the Russians were to kill 10, British peacekeepers, French peacekeepers, German peacekeepers, there is a blood debt to be paid, and I think democracies have a hard time avoiding that escalation. So I think a peace deal puts us closer to a larger war, rather than this North Korea escalation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you seen that the Trump camp right now? Because you remember during the campaign, it was all, I'll stop this war before I even get into office. And like anybody who's following the war knows that was never going to be the case, and that's not realistic.
He said 24 hours starting January 20th.
Right. It's been all over the place. But did you see, what's the guy? His Ukraine envoy. I can't remember his name now.
Kellogg.
Was it Kellogg that said, let's see what we can get done in the first 100 days?
Yep, General Kellogg, yep.
Yeah, so it just keeps moving in terms of any sort of end to this conflict, which, I don't know, maybe that was just a political thing. But again, I think anybody who's been following the conflict for a while understands that this was not something that was going to be resolved in a week's time. We'll see. Do you think the next 100 days are actually going to see movement towards that? Like, is there a real chance of a peace deal in the next 3 months?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe you get like a ceasefire, but I don't think you see a peace deal. And I think, like, more generally, I don't know, the whole, like, we're going to get in the first 100 days, 24 hours, and then Trump trying to work retrospectively backwards to give himself more time is, I don't know. It seems like it was Trump's finding out what everyone else knew. This is quite hard to figure out because Russia is this behemoth with irrational demands. But I don't know. The way I stand on it is that it's going to be very hard unless they force a peace on Ukraine. I just can't see them going along with this. They could. I mean, maybe they give them more arms and they try to force a peace deal. I don't know, but I don't see how they can get one in the next 100 days that is beneficial to Ukraine, that Ukraine agrees to. And maybe they just cut off aid then if Ukraine doesn't agree to the deal.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a mistake. But what do you think? Do you think in 100 days there will be worldwide peace again?
Yeah. I don't think we're quite there, but I think there will be a big change in this conflict. Right now, we're seeing on a lot of Russian channels, they're getting concerned about what Trump's leverage points are going to be. And what they're kind of predicting is that Trump will, and already is to a degree, pushing Ukraine to decrease the mobilization age to 18. There's already been some talk about that happening in Ukraine, which would increase their manpower. And then a push on Russia to lower some of their terms to end the war. And if Ukraine doesn't lower the mobilization age and probably some other things, then arms shipments will slow. And if Russia doesn't cede certain demands that they've had on the table, then sanctions will increase. But those same Russian channels that are talking about that are at the same time laughing, going, what more sanctions, man? Like, what are you going to do? You've kind of layered it on at this point. So I think we're going to see some new deliberate action to try to bring about an end to the war that hasn't been tried yet. But no idea. And I think it'll be on both sides. I think there'll be pressure added to Ukraine and to Russia.
What do you make of Trump may have a curveball in his first 100 days, and that the Institute, I believe the Institute of the Study of War, is reporting that Russia could attempt or is attempting to annex Belarus. That is quite the curveball to be given to President Trump in his first 100 days.
What's the argument? What's the argument? I haven't seen that argument because they already.
Pull this up here.
It's like borderline a puppet state of Russia as is. Why the annexation? And they.
Correct. So the reason is they're nearing the final stages of a decades-long strategic effort to de facto annex Belarus. It'll significantly boost Russia's military and economic capacity, and it will put them closer to NATO, which I would just like to point out. This war started because Russia claimed they were scared of being close to NATO, yet they're doing everything they can to get closer and closer. And so that's what's happening here is that they are working to annex it and become one country. We'll see how that works. Not good, but
I don't know.
Yeah, they have had this union plan for a while now.
I also want to say Institute for the Study of War can do some great tactical level analysis at times, but they've had some flyers. They've had a few that have been off the wall. So I don't know.
Really?
Annexation of Belarus seems weird.
I mean, it seems like you're right. It already is a puppet state, right? They saved Lukashenko in 2020 when his people were rebelling against him, and he had the election. You're right, it is de facto, but it just seems like if you annex it, you're really inflaming tensions to a whole new level.
Yeah, but I don't know what you get out of that. Russia already has all the advantages. They've forward deployed nuclear weapons to Belarus a couple years ago. They've added Belarus under their nuclear umbrella, talking about if a third party, if another nation that's part of a alliance attacks Russia or Belarus, they are subject to a nuclear retaliation. They've done all of those things. It's hard to see unless Belarus has some joke referendum and 98.7% vote to join Russia, maybe that would be the thing that would happen. But anything by force, I feel like Russia, they're occupied, man. They don't want this to come across, but they are so tied up in Ukraine right now. Like,
Yeah.
look at what happened in Syria. They can do nothing. They can't evacuate the Tartus naval base right now. They can't get their people out of the country. Like, this is the global power, right? They are so tied down, so bogged down in Ukraine that they are being denied access to their own naval base in Syria, and they're just kind of letting it happen. So I have a hard time believing that they would be able to put together anything robust to overthrow or take over, even by soft means, another country right now. I think they're pretty narrowly focused on Ukraine.
I could see that. I also think I spoke to someone who's like an expert on Russia and that whole space, and they said that between the two countries, Lukashenko is the better politician, and that if they merge, Lukashenko would be the one who comes out as the leader. That was before. That
like
was before
Lukashenko would take over the Russia-Belarus nation?
That's what he told me. That's what he said. And I am obviously very skeptical of that because I'm like, maybe you don't know Vladimir Putin yet, but I do. And not a good guy, not giving it up. But he says that when it comes to politics and power, it's all in Lukashenko. And I won't dispute it. Lukashenko is a good politician. He is not a good dictator, but he's a, I don't know. He knows how to play his cards.
He's good at dictating. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good at dictating. He knows how to play his cards well, and he acts like he's a moron, but he's not, right? Like, remember when he revealed the plans, the secret Russian battle plans on the big, he had it on this, and then he also, what else did he do? The reason he couldn't deploy troops to Ukraine in the fall of 2022 was because he needed them to pick potatoes and apples in the farms because the parliament passed a bill that wouldn't let kids do it. So he needed the military to do it. And that
he
is
also
why
brokered the Prigozhin-Putin peace deal.
That is true.
It fell apart in midair about a month later.
That is true. And the fact that he turned back is still to this day, one of the most insane things I've ever seen before in my life. Can you believe that? I mean, Wagner was shooting down helicopters. They were digging up roads around Moscow. No one was stopping him. And he just goes, all right, we're done. And then he dies on a plane 3 months later. Bizarre. Truly.
I think that was the dog that caught the car. You know what I mean?
You think so?
He starts, he's like, if you don't do this thing, I'm gonna drive there and show you what's up. And like Putin just didn't call, and next thing you know, he's like, son of a bitch, we are within howitzer range of Moscow right now. Nobody stopped us. Putin hasn't called. I don't know what's going on. I think he got over his skis a little bit, but
it really was. I hope he's not forgotten to history, because those things he would do on the front line where he's yelling Shogu, Garashima, how they're like betraying his troops. I mean, that was electric content. All right.
As a content creator, that was the best 48, 72 hours I've had, the most peaceful, because the troll farms just went silent. They didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. The Internet Research Agency is a Prigozhin organization. So they've got their guy marching on Moscow, threatening some sort of maybe mutiny, revolt, whatever you want to call it. The troll comments just fell off a cliff. They weren't there. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, noticeably absent. They didn't know, like, wait, which side of this are we taking? Who are we supporting? And then there's a period of time after that where it wasn't sure if that was going to be absorbed by the state or shut down entirely. People were getting laid off. It was great. In the internet space, the information space was wonderful for a few days.
It was nuts. And do you remember, like, the feeling of, like, you heard rumors, like, oh, there's movement, and you're just like, yeah, whatever. We hear this all the time. And then all of a sudden, the video comes out of them in Rostov. And you're like, wait. Whoa, hold on a second.
And the people cheering them on, rooting for them.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was like, oh my God, it's real. By far one of the craziest news events I've covered. And it's a shame he stopped. But it looks like the TikTok Supreme Court ruling just came out here.
All right, so to bring it up to speed.
Yes, good.
The TikTok ban that at times both Biden and Trump have supported and been against. I can't keep track of who likes it and who doesn't like it anymore. The thing was that TikTok had to divest from ByteDance, a Chinese-owned corporation, by a certain date, or they'd be shut down. And there's over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of talk that they're just going to go dark in like 2 days here on the 19th, like shut it down entirely, and you can't access it. So, Ben, where are we at? The Supreme Court's meeting today.
The Supreme Court ruled. I don't have what they ruled, but I assume it's 9-0. They ruled that TikTok will either need to sell or be banned in the United States starting on the 19th. Either sell by the 19th or be banned. But the ruling doesn't really matter anymore because President Biden said, well, actually, I'm not going to have the DOJ enforce the ban starting the 19th, which means, on the 19th, Biden only has 36 more hours as president. So he's kind of just throwing it to Trump and says, you figure it out, which I think is what Trump wants because Trump's been saying he's going to make a deal. All he does make deals, right? And so he's going to make a deal there. He is also having the TikTok CEO come to his inauguration. So for now, it looks like TikTok is safe. I think this position is perhaps ideal, though, for the United States and for Trump because TikTok is de facto banned, but you're not enforcing the ban, so it still exists, right? That means, essentially, Trump, when the trade war gets hot, because it will, he can just ban it, or he can use his leverage against Beijing. But I would argue I'm not sure that any leverage can be bestowed on TikTok because clearly the reason Biden's not enforcing this ban and the reason Trump is scrambling for it is because when Congress passed this bill, they believe ByteDance would sell, and now they're not, and now everyone's mad at them. So that's why you see in the House Republicans scrambling to get this not banned. In the Senate, you see Democrats introducing bills going nowhere. They give TikTok another extension. No one wants to be caught holding this football, and it does make the United States, I think, look weak to a certain extent because the smart move would have been sell or be banned, right? And then maybe TikTok then sells after they're banned. Who knows? But it's now they're entirely caved, and not great, I would say. But
What are they saying over on Red Note? What's the feeling there?
Have you been on Red Note? Because once it seemed like TikTok would be banned, they have entirely people started looking for a new app, and somehow they end up on Red Note. Now, for anyone who's not informed, our audience is mostly male, mostly middle-aged. Well, I shouldn't say not informed. I guess
not aware of this specific thing. Yeah,
they're not aware of the nonsense happening here. So somehow the TikTok people decide that they're going to go to this new app called Red Note. Now, Red Note is specifically marketed towards Chinese people, Chinese citizens, people in mainland China, and the diaspora. And the app logo's in Chinese, the description's in Chinese, all the marketing's in Chinese, the entire app is in Chinese, yet somehow Americans are on there. And it has created such an interesting thing because Red Note, they never thought to build, because in China, the law is that foreigners and domestic people are on different stuff, So
Facebook
they're on different,
and Google, and
yeah, like TikTok used to be one company, it got divided into two, right? Kind of crazy. But with this, they were just not ready for it, right? It was just like, okay, people who are from China and people who live in China and they'll be able to speak and it'll be fine. But now Americans are on there and it's causing havoc and they're fighting. And though there are some very genuine, I don't know if you've seen any of it. There are a lot of very genuine moments of cultural exchange. And this is the first time Americans and Chinese have been able to speak on the internet since for 20 years now, and that's awesome. But to the same time, it's had differing effects on both populations, so much so that China is now demanding it be cut in two immediately. So,
wait a minute, yeah.
For one, American Zoomers say, China is so great, our country's been lying to us, it's not a threat, and they have life so much better than us. And I would note that it's like a Pinterest app that people say is mostly for the rich people in China. So
So it's
like
like
I
if
don't
somebody
know.
looked at Instagram and was like, "Wait a minute, these Americans are all of them are
Yep.
flying private." Yeah,
Yep. So it is 100% like that. And they're like, wow, everyone's lying to us. They have everything so great. And they're finding out Chinese people think they're not free, that they just have the illusion of choice. Anyways, it reminds me of this old Soviet joke where an American told a Soviet man, he says, well, the Soviet Union's not free because I can go in front of the White House and say, fuck off Ronald Reagan, right? Or no, he says, to hell with Ronald Reagan. And you can't do that in the Soviet Union. The Soviet guy says, that's not true. I can go in front of the Red Square and yell, to hell with Ronald Reagan. And so that's kind of how this goes, right? Like the Chinese and the Americans agree that they hate the government, right? But it's only going one way. But now other screenshots have been coming out where Americans have been telling the Chinese, like, how do you only work 5 days a week, right? And only 8 hours a day. And the Americans, like, you have to start a union, which are banned in China, right? Like, you have to start a union, and they're, like, teaching about, like, collective bargaining. There's also been a thing about how to 3D print guns, right? And they're just like, oh, well, here, you can get around it through this way. Here's how you 3D print the guns. As well as just, like, more general things. It's when this first started happening, I did get a little worried because I thought maybe Gen Z is truly falling for this Chinese propaganda. But then the more I started observing, I was like, no, no, no. Americans are an invasive species on every foreign platform they go onto. They destroy everything, and this is not going to pan out well. And I was correct. So China
it's
is
pretty
now
funny.
splitting them off. Yeah.
It's funny how the original thought was, oh my God, we're going to be exposed to our citizens are just going to be handing over more data to the Chinese government. Because Red Note is, for what it's worth, ByteDance is a private company, albeit with heavy ties to the Chinese Communist Party, like any major company in China. Redbook is a government platform, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it is owned by the government. There's not like a veil of private company there at all. So it's like, out of the fire into the frying pan kind of thing. And I've seen some great posts of people saying, like, if they shut down Redbook, I'm just going to print out my browser history every day and mail it directly to China.
Right.
But what's funny, the funniest thing to me here was this concern right out the gate of like, oh no, all of our citizens are going to be consuming more Chinese propaganda. And it did not take long for China to be like, holy shit, this might not actually be a good thing. They're overwhelming us. They're sharing dangerous ideas with our people now. I think that's hilarious.
Oh, without a doubt. I got the reason why we started. I got a little nervous, but like you're right. The way Americans talk, they're ungovernable. Americans are ungovernable. They don't self-censor, and like the Chinese are like, no, we don't talk about race, religion, and politics here, and the Americans are like, oh no, yeah, we do. We just create different words for it. They're like, oh, we can't say this, or we just create a code word for it. And so I don't want to say the Chinese regime's crumbling down, but like, I don't know if that went on for another week, it might be the seeds of discord might be sown. But
I'm
it is
also seeing
fascinating to see that they ruined it.
a
Yeah.
lot of people I follow on X in the kind of national security type space. They're going over to that platform and seeing what they can do to get banned. So like whoever the moderators on Redbook are probably having a day right now because it is like they're just over there testing the waters. Like, can we talk about Tiananmen Square? Nope. Okay, let's try this again. How about support for Ukraine? Nope. Okay, let's try. And like they're just poking and prodding in every direction until their account gets banned because they don't care, right? Like, who cares if your account gets banned on a Chinese government platform? But either way, look, honestly, man, we're going to get into these confirmation hearings in a second, and I feel like it's the same thing there, and I feel like it's the same with the budget talks. Every time we get close to a government shutdown, and it's the same thing we're seeing happen with TikTok right now, where it feels more and more just like it's a show. Like, what are we even doing here? Like, there's all this debate and back and forth and up and down, and then like at the end of the day, the deadline comes and we go, maybe not. Like, is that not the same as these budget conversations where, like, the government's going to shut down and people won't get their Social Security checks and veterans won't get their disability benefits and the VA is going to fall apart and the roads are going to burn? And, like, I don't know how roads burn, but like all the bad things are going to happen. And then inevitably the day comes and they're like, actually, why don't we just wait until Monday to make a decision? And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, it just, I don't know. Like, what are we doing?
So, I see your general point here. I'll say, so Vox had a fascinating article this week called "The President Who Couldn't Choose" about Joe Biden, and it was written before he decided to punt on the TikTok ban. But basically, it just goes into how his last 2 years completely sabotages it because he can't choose, right? Anything related to Israel, anything related now to the TikTok ban, right? Is he going to save it? Is he not? He's not going to make a decision, right? Ukraine aid, all this. It's the president who could not choose. So you're right. Like, the past 2 years just been like a guy who can't make a single decision, overwhelmed by the information, unable to decide which way to go. So, yeah, that's what this TikTok ban is. And the budget thing, I mean, the hysteria over the budget and the debt ceiling is everyone's trying to up the media pressure, try to get the other side to cave. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, yeah, that's what's happening there. But speaking of Congress, did you see Mike Turner got canned from chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, or the Foreign Relations Committee in the House. And not only did he get canned from the leadership, he's also canned from the committee altogether. And he has not been seen on the House floor since.
Okay. I've seen a couple different takes on this, and I don't know the background entirely, but so he's a Republican,
Yep.
correct? Okay.
He's the chairman, or was.
Yeah. And the argument, I saw some people saying it wasn't good because some Ukraine supporters saying this isn't good because he's generally been a Ukraine hawk and has supported more arms and less restrictions to Ukraine. I haven't heard the reason why he was removed, other than Speaker Johnson said like it was time to make that decision or something. What's the rationale behind the move?
I believe Forbes reported that Mar-a-Lago told him he had to go. That was what Forbes
So what's the
said,
rationale there? What's the rationale there?
that he's too close to NATO. He's too pro-Ukraine. He's not. Mike Turner's made a lot of efforts to be a kind of a China hawk, a Russia hawk for Ukraine, also for NATO and our alliances, but also stay in Trump's orbit, be a Trump guy. And he's very unique in that aspect, in that he has his own like foreign policy beliefs, but he's a Trump guy through and through. And so they just wanted him gone. I think it is very bad news for Ukraine. I don't know who they've replaced, but I do know that I saw Jim Hines, the Democrat who's his partner on the ranking committee, right, came out on Twitter and basically vouched for him and talked about how much he liked Mike and how it's a shame that he's been canned and how the executive branch shouldn't tell Congress what to do, yada, 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 yada. But, yeah, so this is bad. Mike Turner, though, has not showed up, and you got to wonder what's going to happen here, because if he resigns, the Republican majority is reduced to 216 to 215.
He might resign because of this? Really?
I mean, he hasn't shown up in Congress. It's been nearly a week now, and he's missed
I thought
votes.
I thought this was just a day or two ago. Am I?
No, this happened maybe not a week ago. Tuesday? Wednesday?
Okay.
So,
I mean, if it was Wednesday and he hasn't shown up since, that's just 2 days. That wouldn't be anything crazy, right?
I believe it is. I mean, I may be right, but he hasn't shown up since, which is not great. Very odd. And so maybe he resigns. If he resigns, that's pretty bad for the Republican majority, because I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that like at least 2 congressmen or women die every year.
What?
Just
No.
like on
Is that real?
like on average. Yeah,
Sitting
like
in Congress? What?
Yeah, like they get in car accidents, they have heart attacks, strokes, whatever. And maybe it's only one a year, but it definitely. So I mean, if you're 216, 215, that's not great for holding majority, but it also makes passing any kind of bill nearly impossible. So we'll see. Maybe he just won't show up ever again. I don't know, or maybe he'll come back and. But very odd behavior for Mike Turner there. Are you Googling to make sure I'm right about people, congressmen dying?
Yeah, man, it's a lot.
Yeah.
There's been 12. 1, 2, 3. 12 in the last 5 years?
5 years,
No,
yeah.
in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of them. There are 435 of them, 438 of them. So, and they travel a lot. They're usually old, and it adds up, right? It
88,
adds up.
90, 87,
Yep.
84, 80, 88,
Mm-hmm.
89, 88, 92.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Yep.
that happens when
Time.
you're 92, right?
Time
Um,
always wins. But to go to the other
okay.
house of Congress,
Yeah.
did you watch the Rubio hearing?
I did not watch any of the hearings in their entirety. I did the American thing of watching clips and reading people's coverage of it.
Oh, awesome. Uh, I can't blame you though. So the Rubio hearing, everyone loves Marco. Everyone loves Marco. He's gonna go. He might get 90 votes. I don't know if he'll get like 100, but maybe. Or no, he can't get 100 because his seat isn't filled yet. So maybe he gets 99. Who's to say? But everyone loves Marco. It was such a wholesome hearing. Republicans and Democrats across the board were very happy for him. They were very excited for their colleague,
I can't
Tammy
tell if you're being
Duckworth.
sarcastic or not. I
I'm
can't tell
being
the
no, I'm being
sarcasm yet.
serious.
Okay. All
Everyone
right. All
loved
right. All right. All
Marco.
right.
He gave such a professional hearing, and there was no fighting. Everyone loved him. And Tammy Duckworth, the Democratic senator here from Illinois, you might know her. Or not. You might know of her. She's an Iraq War veteran. She's in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
She lost, I believe, 3 of her limbs to an IED, something like that. So she's in a wheelchair, and she's gonna have. She told a story about how she wanted Congress to allow you to bring newborns or to breastfeed inside the Senate building. And Marco Rubio joined her in that, and he said, "Tammy Duckworth, I support it," and he backed her in it, and they won the fight on that, and now they can do that, which is great. And so she told that story. A lot of them told their stories about how they like Marco Rubio. It really goes to show that the Senate, if the House is middle school, the Senate is like, I don't know. They all like each other in the Senate. In the House, that's not true. But in the Senate, everyone's friends. Um, and so they're all very excited for him. And so he's going to get through fully and entirely, which is great. Shout out to Marco Rubio.
You know who doesn't
Any
like
comments on
Marco
that?
Rubio? Yeah,
Who
the
doesn't like
Russians.
Marco Rubio?
I noticed in their
No.
coverage of the hearings, which I think is interesting to see that how they look at our. I'm always fascinated to see like how our adversaries are looking at our political happenings, and they refer to him as Little Marco.
Well, that's what Trump called him in 2016.
Oh,
That's
is
his
that
nickname.
why? Okay, all right.
Yeah, Trump said you have small hands, and then Marco Rubio said, "Well, you have a small dick." It was the most insane thing I've ever seen on a debate stage. Um, so, yeah, that's what happened there. Um, no, wait, no, I have it all wrong. Marco Rubio said Trump had little hands. Then Trump said, "Well, you have a little dick," and then Trump called him Little Marco because he's short. So
Okay,
that is what happened. Sorry for everyone. I didn't want to spread misinformation. I
way to
was
mix that
trying to
up.
remember
Yeah,
8 years. Yeah.
censor
Okay.
here.
So yeah, no, they don't like him because he's
So
gonna make them pay a
Rubio's
price.
gonna get approved. Rubio's gonna get approved. But
Yeah, but
that was like that's like one of the least controversial picks that's been made. So like that has not been one that's been really. He's pretty vanilla when it comes to it, right? Like we know what the guy feels about a lot of things. The only thing up in the air really is how will his views change now that he's in this new role serving as Secretary of State? Will they be drastically different than his time as a senator? Time will tell, as it is with everybody, but nothing out of the ordinary there.
well, yeah, I also will say about Rubio is, maybe not good news for him. I've seen Politico, I've seen Punchbowl, I've seen Semaphore, all write articles about how Marco Rubio is not going to last long, and that's interesting. I believe Rex Tillerson, did he even last a full year? I don't know, but they think Rubio is out within the first 180 days. I think he might last longer than that.
It's a good 6
Although
months.
who's to say? So maybe that's not good news for him. But we shall go, Preston. If you recall, you and I had a lovely Subway lunch at the Pentagon, and soon,
Yeah.
soon, who knows if we'll get invited back? Pete Hegseth looks like he will be confirmed. I'll give my thoughts here on the second, but we'll recap the hearing. The hearing was long, and it was not good. I think objectively, I've watched 20, 25 confirmation hearings in my life. I'm a
Oh,
bit of a nerd in that way.
you're not getting any of that back, man. Yeah.
No, I'm not. But it does come in use for like this 6-minute segment on Pete Hegseth here.
Right now,
So
it's really
like,
important.
right
Yeah.
now, this is my Super Bowl, right? I've watched at least 25 of these confirmation hearings in my life. This is by far the worst one I've ever seen before in my entire life. I have never seen anyone more incompetent, unqualified, and just ignorant of what the job calls of them. And I mean, even the questions are brutal. I mean, we'll get into like the policy things here, but they were pressing him on his alcoholism, and he said that he would stop drinking if he got the job, which is horrible. He wouldn't commit to not drinking on the job either. Then they were quizzing him about his multiple affairs, and having children with multiple women. And they're just like, you couldn't follow, what was it? Tim Kaine said you couldn't follow all these oaths, right, to your wives. How can we make sure you're going to follow the oath to the United States? Which I don't know if that's really an effective talking point, but the point's there. And he just said, well, I'm not a perfect person. I'm working on it. Those are two, like, just right off the bat, not a good start. But then they started getting the policy questions, right? And the Republicans on the committee mostly focused on like cultural issues inside the DoD, like pronouns or DEI hires. Tommy Tuberville said that 2 Navy SEALs. You might know Tommy Tuberville, who's a senator from Alabama. He was used to be the former head coach of Auburn, and he said that he had met with 2 Navy SEALs who were just serving overseas. Then when they came back, they had to sit through an hour-long diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and then they immediately quit and left, which I thought, like, I don't know if that's true or not, but, like, it is a little funny. Like, all right, I got shot at, but now I can't sit through an hour-long meeting. So he said that's kind of what they focus on. But then Democrats started asking, I wouldn't say they're hard questions. They should have been slam dunks for him. They asked him to name the countries in ASEAN, and he could not, and that was rough. He also would not commit to the United States following the Geneva Convention. The United States is not party, I believe, to all the Geneva Conventions, but it does follow them. He also refused to state whether he would follow an unlawful order given by President Trump to deploy the military against civilians. He would not commit to that, and he also refused to give an answer. So, I mean, outside of the alcoholism and being a bad moral character and being unqualified, not knowing what he's doing, he also doesn't really seem interested in like following the Constitution or like pretending to. What are your thoughts on Hegseth?
There's a lot here. So, first off, the something we have to keep in mind that is it appears to be relatively unique to Trump, but there is a loyalty test involved with Trump's appointees. We've seen that now from his time in office. So I think that there's a part of that here where Hegseth has to be careful to toe the line and make sure that Trump knows that he's his guy. So you got to keep that back in mind. Probably something going through his mind as he's answering these questions. I hate the amount of time spent on the personal stuff. I just I wish that stuff mattered. It clearly doesn't, and it hasn't for some time in these leadership positions. So, like, yeah, the dude's kind of a sleazeball when it comes to a lot of things in his personal life, no doubt. If you have a limited amount of time to ask somebody questions and dig into whether or not they should be the Secretary of Defense, I don't know that any of the time should have been spent on that. Like, we knew all of that stuff. And those same accusations, unfortunately, are, I mean, again, to go to Trump, like, this was the thing that was this is why Trump would not get elected, right? These personal stories about him would come out and it would tank him. And that didn't happen. And it seems like people are still like, no, this time that's going to be the thing that does it. So I think that's a complete waste of time. Maybe it got some media bites. I don't know.
I agree. I think that the wife inquiries, why did she and your wife, completely pointless. I think there is valid concern over the drinking problem because he is in the chain of command for nuclear weapons. I think that's valid. And I also think it was valid to ask him about the sexual assaults, but he just said they're all anonymous. smears.
So the other aspect, Ben, when getting into the policy stuff, is interesting here because you're right. He didn't, and this is, we've talked about this before. When he was first nominated, my pushback was it seems like his focus is on cultural issues, which could be a great setup for an undersecretary of defense. But for the secretary of defense, I think there's other priorities that should take the cake, and it doesn't. This hearing didn't convince me that there's anything more important than some of those cultural issues, which I still don't think are the number one concern for our military. I'm not going to say they shouldn't be addressed or anything like that. There's always things we can do to improve, but not knowing some of the key aspects of being a Secretary of Defense, I think, is a little concerning. And I just look. I like somebody younger moving into the position. I like the idea of a change agent in the Pentagon. I like it not being a career military person. I think those are all net benefits. I like it being somebody whose time in the military was as a combat leader at the junior officer level. I think that's all really, really positive. Those are all good things. Could we find those good things in somebody who also has some degree of an experience managing a large organization or some time working at the strategic level of understanding geopolitics at a think tank maybe, or who knows? Like, it can be from the blob, it can be from outside of the blob. I don't really care. It just seems like there's a lot of shortcomings here that, like, I feel like folks are trying to gloss over by the fact that he was in the military. There's a lot of people that were in the military that would check a lot of these boxes that also have foreign policy experience or an understanding of international alliances and a prioritization of Asia Pacific versus the Middle East versus Europe. And like, we're not touching any of that stuff at all. That seems, I don't like that.
I agree. I also was about to pull this up here. They kept reiterating the claim that he'd be the only Secretary of Defense to serve in active combat, at least in modern history, which is just not true either. I believe Mark Milley served in combat.
He wasn't the Secretary of Defense.
You're right. He was not Secretary of Defense. But Lloyd Austin, he commanded. What did he do? He did something with Iraq, right?
Served in Iraq.
But a lot of them were grunts before they were commissioned officers who fought in wars, whether it was Vietnam, the Persian Gulf, or Iraq. But I guess a lot of them, those who served in Iraq 2003, were a bit higher. But regardless, he's not the first, and I don't know why they keep reiterating that. And also, Pete Hegseth has the same. He's a major in the Army National Guard, which is what you are, Preston. And I don't know. I mean, do you, like, as we discussed, I believe on our very first episode, second episode, I asked you, would you be willing to do the DoD job? And you said no. And I think that kind of emphasizes this. I don't. Pete Hegseth is not cut out for the job. Serving in active combat does not make him equipped for this job. His brain is a stew of memes. And I have a question for you. What did you feel about them? They kept referring to soldiers as the war fighters. Was that very weird to you, or do you think, nah, that's fine?
No, it's just I maybe don't hear that much in kind of traditional media, but throughout my time in service, we've often referred to them as war fighters. You kind of use the interchangeably with soldiers. Yeah. I've always kind of liked the term, actually, because I think it kind of drives home what you're doing and why you're doing it. You know, you're not there to do PowerPoint slides. You're there to fight wars. So the term's pretty regularly used.
Gotcha.
There was an aspect in here, though, that I thought was worth hitting on around quotas for women in the military. There was some stuff thrown around that just wasn't correct at all, and it's frustrating to see. I should preface this with I like the general direction that this pick is going. Again, younger, not a general. I don't like 4-star generals or chiefs of staff moving into the SecDef role. I think that's a bad precedent to set. I don't think we should do that at all. They're far too close to the people directly in the chain of command. But either way, there was a piece in there about quotas for females in the military. I've never been in a unit where that's a thing. in any way, shape, or form, or even like suggested. So I'm not exactly. I've seen folks try to like rephrase that in one direction or another, but I've never even been in an organization where that's a discussion, let alone a formality. So I don't. I don't know. I think that I don't want to say that's made up, but in my experience at this point, that's never been a thing.
No, I believe it was made up. Yeah, because I think a Democratic senator pressed him on it later or something. But yeah, no, he said there needed to be a quota, and that just wasn't true. Joni Ernst, everyone going into this, she's the senator out of Iowa. She served in the U.S. military, and she left because she was sexually assaulted. It's her big story, what she campaigned on. And when it came to Pete Hegseth, people thought we were going to see fireworks, right? Pete is a guy who he served, and we'll get to that part in a second. But he also has been accused of sexually assaulting women, and you would think Joni Ernst would have something to say about that. I mean, these are the stances she takes, but she does not. She says she will be voting for him, which is the one I thought would be the biggest issue there. But the other issue here of Pete Hegseth, and they kind of got like a little bit into it during the hearing, is that Pete was supposed to be part of the Army National Guard that was deployed to Inauguration Day after January 6th. And the DOD flagged him and said he can't serve. He's too closely aligned with white supremacist groups. And they noted a white supremacist tattoo he has on his chest. And so he was removed from that National Guard unit that was supposed to protect the Capitol because he was deemed too much of a potential threat to the proceedings happening. I don't know how you can put someone like that in. I don't know. I agree with you that perhaps it needs to be an outsider, someone not in the chain of staff. But Pete Hegseth here, I mean, that feels like the nail in the coffin on top of everything else, at least to me.
Yeah, let me push back on that one for a second, though, because that process there, the insider threat concern in the U.S. military has been a thing for a while. It's nothing new. I mean, we just saw this terrorist, soldier turned terrorist down in New Orleans, right? Fell victim to Islamic State propaganda. And when we're downrange, it's always been a very real threat, not just mostly with our partner forces, but you're always looking inside the force for any sort of concerns that could be a risk. So in a case like that, it would not have been top down identified. It would have been bottom up driven to a degree. So it's not like DOD would have been sitting at their computers at the Pentagon saying, wait a minute, this dude over here has a tattoo we don't like, because they wouldn't have any way of actually getting to that information. It would have been people in the organization, in his unit, saying whether it's the tattoos or something he said or something he believed or who knows. I don't know the whole story there. But it would have started at the unit level of somebody around him flagging that and saying, I'm concerned that this could be an issue. And at some point up the chain, somebody made the determination, cool, not worth the risk. Like, they're not going. That said, it's so, I think it probably would be inaccurate to say like the Department of Defense made the decision. That decision was probably made at a pretty low level. The other side of that is it's very similar to like a no-fly list. Like you can get added to a no-fly list for any number of reasons, and you don't necessarily need to be notified. And like you haven't been proven to do anything wrong in the court of law. You're not guilty, but the same thing right here. What if Ben Wilson is on the no-fly list? I would say that disqualifies him from any number of jobs in the United States. He can't serve there. And you're sitting here going like, wait a minute, what if it was a mistake? We don't even know why I was added. So that's one that I know there's been a lot of debate about the tattoos, this, that, and the other, but the fact that he was removed from that detail is interesting. Like that stands out for sure. To me, it shows that people within his organization had some concerns. But I'd be hesitant to throw that down as like a hard and fast on anything.
No, that makes sense. Do you think Hegseth's getting through here?
I was going to ask you.
Okay, my take is
you
yes.
tell me.
I think yes.
Okay.
I think if they were honest broke, I think if Trump was not applying pressure, there's not a chance. But I think there's too much pressure. He's getting in. Thoughts?
It's hard for me to tell. I haven't watched 25 hearings. And a part of this is like you're always going to get like the one side pushing the other because they can, and then you're always going to get the same side kind of offering softball questions like how many rounds can you fit in a M4 magazine or whatever some of those silly ones were. So it's hard for me to read between the lines, but from what I'm reading, it sounds like most people think that he's going to get it. So
I think he does. I mean, a lot of like he didn't meet with any of the Democrats on the committee.
is that normal, abnormal? Where's that sit?
Very abnormal. Usually you meet with all the senators who will meet with you, and then there's like some camaraderie, right? Because the Senate, I mean, it's not the House, right? The House is crazy. The Senate, I mean, these are like functioning adults. So like, you know, there's camaraderie that gets built, and they express their concerns, and you respond. He didn't meet with any of the Democrats on the committee, which is, I assume, I mean, they don't need Democratic votes for this. So I assume that is part of the strategy, and I assume Trump likes that. So was it? But speaking of Trump, he gets sworn in here, which means
Well, can we
Joe
go to
Biden.
one more? Can we go to one more nominee? Tulsi Gabbard for DNI has been kicked down the road indefinitely, correct?
That's correct. I don't think she gets in.
Is the hearing being kicked down the road indefinitely, asking my guy that understands Washington more than I do, is that like a polite way of people saying like this isn't going to happen, we got to find somebody else? Or is this kind of a
way
normal
of saying, so like right now, so right now there are a handful of nominees. For the most part, all these nominees are going to get in with no issues, probably 90% of votes. Like Rubio and all these other ones, like Doug Burgum at the Department of Interior, he's getting in flying colors, right? They're all fine for the job. But there are a few, Pam Bondi, DOD or DOJ, Pete Hegseth, what's their name? The new commerce guy who wants to do the tariffs, him, and Tulsi Gabbard, and then RFK. These are like the flashpoints, right? And so the reason she's been kicked down the road is that if you have her hearing going on while Pam Bondi's is going on, while Hegseth is going on, then you kind of have this and Bessinet's happening. You kind of have to pick and choose, right? Because obviously the president should get the cabinet he wants, but that's not always true, right? The Senate's like, well, no, some people are crazy, so we're going to pick and choose. And for Biden, I believe he only got one or two rejected, and Trump the first time around, I think he got everyone this one time. So the reason they're kicking it down the road is more so to figure out the math. Because in this thing, right, so say you approve Hegseth, but you reject Bondi, or you approve both of them. If you approve both of them, then when Gabbard comes up, you can say, see you later. And the president can't really get mad because you can say, well, we let Hegseth in, and so we don't have to make the sacrifice to let Gabbard in. So that's basically what's happening. I hope I explained that well.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Wait and see. Did you see one of the interviews with there is some senator? I should have a better source on this, and I'm just going off memory. But he said he questioned her about her trip to Syria, and she said, "Well, actually, I was supposed to go to Lebanon, and when we landed, we found out we were in Syria." I was like, "Listen, that doesn't happen.
No,
that's not a thing."
She is not getting in. There's not a chance. I think that's. I do wonder if they're going to keep it empty or what. But yeah, indefinitely is a way of saying it's not happening. But it's also try to help the math to allow them to reject her if he doesn't rescind her. So, all right,
move us along.
Before we get to Mr. Trump or President Trump, I guess he's Mr. Trump for a little bit now. Or no, he's president. It doesn't matter. Did you watch the funeral where they all spoke to each other? The presidents?
I saw the clips. I saw something about a clip of Obama and Trump and kind of just talking and joking with each other. I like that.
It was interesting. I've never seen Obama and Trump talk to each other. I wonder what they were talking about. Maybe it was golf. And Trump said afterwards, quite funnily, he said, well, I looked at it and I thought, wow, those are two guys talking who like each other. Maybe we do like each other. And I was like, oh, boy. Whatever, man. So President Biden, his presidency, next time we have a new podcast, we will have a new president. And Biden is gone. On the 20th, he's going to get on a horse, ride off into the sunset after a storied career of 50 years. And here's a fun fact for you. Joe Biden has has served the longest in the U.S. government than any president in history. No president has served 50 years before becoming the president. So that's kind of crazy, right? But it gives you an idea of how old this man is. Joe Biden's birth is closer to the end of the Civil War than it is to today. So I know. But retrospective, he's president for 4 years, as most are. And what grade do you give him? I'll start here. I think the first 2 years, generational. The last 2 years, what was going on? The last 2 years he was awful. He was not doing anything right, and he really just seemed like he didn't know where he was at. Not like I'm not making a dementia joke. He just seemed like I said, the president who couldn't choose. What do you give President Biden here?
All right. Well, I'm going to approach this from I'm going to go foreign policy, international relations, national security perspective. Just because I don't spend a lot of time in the domestic happenings and all that. I would say C minus. I think he made it through. We're past it. 4 years. America's not in a global war. That's always you don't fail so long as we're there. But it seems like we made very little progress in a lot of areas. It's hard to point to anything where we've really advanced any sort of advantage against China. It seems like we kind of kicked that can down the road in a lot of ways. It's just hard for me to point to anything in the national security, international relations realm where we're in a better spot today because of decisions and policies put forward by Biden. I think NATO is stronger today than it was when he came into office, but I don't think that's his doing. I think that is the direct result of the invasion of Ukraine, and it's other countries in the alliance stepping up. I think there's been a lack of long-term planning in terms of what the end state should look like in Ukraine. And I think there's a lot of waffling in the war in Gaza to the point where it didn't benefit anybody. Arguably, the war could have been over a lot sooner if Biden would have taken different approaches. And it seemed, to your point earlier, the not making decisions, I think that we kind of ceded the international stage in a lot of ways to adversaries and allies. So I'm going to C minus. Where you at?
Yeah, I was also a C, and I think he's. I guess my issues with him are primarily in the Middle East. I feel like he just didn't do anything, right? Couldn't make a decision on what to do. The Houthis, he could not successfully deter them. The IRGC, I mean, they kind of went away after the U.S. just bombed them into oblivion this time last year. But Gaza, Israel, he just had no solution there, and he let Israel tell him what to do. And he just, the Israeli official said that Trump was the first time anyone had ever applied pressure to Israel to accept any kind of ceasefire. Which, you got to wonder. This is Muslim voters in Michigan completely defected from him over this thing. And he just was ineffective, unable to apply pressure to them at all. And you got to wonder why. And
except when he did, though, and that's the thing, is at times he pressured Israel to not go into Gaza at all, to not go into Lebanon, to not conduct serious strikes, retaliatory strikes against Iran, to not go into Rafah, where they ended up finding hostages were being held. So he did exert pressure at times, which is why I think such a low grade here. The course of this conflict, he managed to upset at different times the pro-Israeli crowd, the pro-Palestinian crowd, and the United States. So I got it. Things are complicated, and it's hard to find a definitive solution. But
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
I think the first year of Ukraine, Russia, generational, right? That response, crazy. The United States was ready. The whole world knew it was going to happen. I thought that was awesome. Everything after 2022, I this escalation management, and the escalation management was happening in 2022 as well. But it just got far worse in 2023, and then here in 2024, he was just he was lost out there, He just could not make a decision when it came to it, and he was following this faulty escalation thing. The one thing I do think he's done, and I think we disagree on this part, I think he's dealt with China well. We now have semiconductors and chips here in the United States, and we're on pace to really grow that industry, which is great. And now we have high tech chips being manufactured here. He also ended the beef between Korea and Japan. Before, South Korea and Japan, not close, not tight, hated each other, and now they're in a defensive alliance with the United States and with each other. He did that at Camp David. So, I think he did I think he's done well here. I would have liked to see more of Taiwan, more of U.S. shipbuilding, all this stuff. I think AUKUS, but again, that was in the first 2 years. Same with the Japan-Korea treaty. AUKUS is a great idea. I mean, it's the most quintessential American deal ever, right? We take British stuff, American stuff, and then we make submarines, send them to the Australians. And who gets mad about the whole thing? The French, right? It's this most brilliant American thing. So that is, I give him a C just because I think the first 2 years are so good, and the last two were awful, and maybe he should have not resigned. Maybe he should just not run again. I don't know. Do you think history looks at him favorably, or do you think they look at him like a Buchanan?
You're the presidential historian, so I'll defer to you on what this means, but I think it'll be largely forgotten. I don't think there were no drastic, in the grand scope of things, there were no like major catastrophes that we fell into because of this administration or during. And then I think there was also nothing like monumental that was done. I think it's going to be largely a forgotten president, partially because it's going to be bookended by Trump, which is at baseline just a louder time in history. But yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I
what's a president? Well, there's probably a bunch, but like, what's a president that just like was there, did the job,
and no one remembers them? Let me ask you that: who were the presidents between Teddy Roosevelt and Andrew and Ulysses S. Grant? You can't remember any of them. No, you don't know any of them. Those guys, all right? They're like all one-term presidents who like some of them were corrupt. They were corrupt, or they just didn't do the job well, or they died like 3 days in because they got shot at a train station. I mean, you know it all. So, yeah, I think he might go down as one of those, or maybe he has a Carter legacy. But Joe Biden is not as young as Carter was when he left office. Carter had the ability, to exist for 50 more years outside the Oval Office and develop this global reputation as humanitarian. I love Joe Biden, but I don't think he's going to go build some houses. If he showed up to my house wanting to build, I think I'd give him one of those kid tables, where you have like the hammer and like you hit.
I got some of those here.
Yeah. I think I'd give him that. But Donald Trump, though, he's going to be the 47th president of the United States. He is the new Grover Cleveland, and so what do we make of it here? What are you looking forward to? What are you afraid of? What are you nervous of? What do you think he'll do good? What do you think he'll mess up on? You and I discussed over text message. He did get the flags raised. Right now they're at half-mast for President Carter, and Trump got the flags raised because he thought it looked bad for him to have the flags at half-mast rather than full-mast. I don't know. It's really dumb. So, what do you give him here? What do you think? What are your thoughts, hopes, fears, dreams?
I am looking forward to seeing what some of these change policies look like. You mentioned the Houthis earlier, like they're still there doing their thing. What does that look like? And what is the support for Israel look like? And the Iran getting closer to a nuclear device. Like I'm looking forward to seeing like how do we address these things differently now, because I think a lot of them will be addressed differently. I don't know if that means it's going to be better or worse, but I think just the nature of modern politics is a new president comes into office and they're going to try to do everything they can drastically different than the last guy. So I'm very interested to see how that shakes out, because we kind of know the status quo, but the unknown is the unknown. There could be some incredible solutions out there that we haven't implemented yet. So I'm optimistic that there's some good ideas that we can let fly in some of these conflict areas that bring about, a lasting peace to certain areas and increased American prosperity. So it's a little bit of an unknown that I'm excited about there. That's probably the extent of it, though, because it can vary in any direction so drastically. What about you? What's on your mind as the man takes
What
office?
am I looking forward to for President Trump? Unfortunately, for my fellow Democrats, he is very funny. So I am looking forward to that. He is hysterical. So, I hung out with a group of other libs recently, and we were talking about Trump or something, and I said he's really funny, and they all got quite mad about it. And I was like, you guys got to get over this. All right, he is the most electrifying man in American politics. He is thrilling. He's exciting. Sure, I mean, he might be like totally offensive at times, but he is quite funny, even when he's not being offensive. So, what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to seeing how he handles Ukraine. Right, there is like an inkling feeling in me that maybe he like just throws a bunch of aid at him and tries to force in a peace deal. I think that's like kind of exciting. I think that's, if anything, gets us away from the Joe Biden waffling. So I think that's interesting. I'm intrigued to see what he ends up doing with Taiwan. Does he make it a porcupine or does he make it not there? What am I afraid of with Donald here? I'm very nervous about these tariffs. I don't think he's going. I think they're like hand on the stove bad. So I think maybe he'll do them and then stop. But the one thing I am nervous about, I don't know. I'm worried about how he reacts to protesters and the military and using the FBI to investigate his opponents. And I don't think those are unfounded worries. That's what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail. So I'm just taking him at his word. And if that makes me hysterical, then I guess it does. I don't know. But that I am worried about how he reacts to opposition. But
So the big test will be if you're here or not next week, right? If Ben's not here and
if
I'm hosting solo, that means they got him.
I'll be zooming in from the work camps. I will say this: it is kind of interesting. He will be the president for the moon landing, and I'm thrilled to find out what he's going to say. Right?
What moon landing? Like, there's a new moon landing.
So we're going to the moon, and supposed to be landing in 2026, I believe, 2027, or maybe it's this year. We're landing on the moon at some point here, and he'll be the president for that. So we're putting men back on the moon. He'll also be the president for the Olympics in LA, and he will be the president for the World Cup as well. And he'll be the president for the 250th. What'd you say?
What if he puts a MAGA flag on the moon?
Oh, dude.
There'd be the next Democratic administration. They'd have to set up another moon landing.
Oh, dude. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. Just to remove
Have you seen, there was a Netflix series called Space Force, I think it was. Steve Carell?
Yes, I have Steve Carell, yeah.
It's been a while, but there was something there where they were like trying to get to a certain planet and they get up there and they're like looking at their flag that was planted, and the first thing the Chinese do when they get there is they go over and they like kick the American flag over and plant their own. That's what I'm envisioning. Like a MAGA flag goes up there, and then 4 years later, there's another
I'll go up there
whole
myself,
other landing to get
throw it
taken
in
care of.
orbit, yeah. He'll also be the president for the World Cup and for the 250th anniversary of America. So,
Hey, go USA.
And, I think he's going to do well for this, those four things. Because he's a showman, right? He likes the show and the grandiose. And I think, you know what? They should allow him in charge of the 250th anniversary. I think that would be electric. I think he knows how to throw a party. He knows how to put on a show. He knows what looks good. And I don't know. That's what I'm excited for, what I'm worried about. People in the comments, let us know what you think. Are you, what do you give Biden's presidency? Preston gave him a C-. I give him a C. And what are you worried about for the Trump presidency? What are you looking forward to? What are you worried about? What are you dreaming of? And what are you nervous of? Any news you have, Preston, outside of this?
That'll do it, man. Looking forward to a relaxing weekend here and some not college football, some NFL playoffs, and that's about it.
Let me ask you this. National championship game. Who do you got? Notre Dame or OSU?
I think Ohio State's clearly the better team.
Yeah.
A part of me wants Notre Dame to win because they beat Army this year. So then Army could say one of our only 2 losses was to the national champion. Both teams have been really fun to watch, though. So I'm hoping for a shootout, like 64-57 kind of thing. It would be great.
That Notre Dame Penn State game was the most Notre Dame Penn State game I've ever seen before in my life. Just a whole game where nothing happens. They had the same amount of yards, same time possession. I was just like, this is. I mean, the ending was electric. Don't get me wrong, but it was the most Penn State Notre Dame game of these two teams where they play games that just nothing happens ever. It's just boring. But I am rooting for. I'm going to go Notre Dame. Did you see J.D. Vance tweeted? He said, I hope nobody minds, but I'm going to skip my inauguration for the national championship game. Hysterical. So, anyways, that's going to wrap up our episode, folks. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if we're wrong or if you agree with us or whatever. And we'll talk to you on the other side. Next time you hear from us, it'll be a new president, the 47th president, and it's going to be great. He's going to be on next week, so tune in for that. All right, bye, everyone.